Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, Syracuse.
Good morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Syracuse University, once again. I've been here many, many times. I can't get enough of it. To the Chancellor, thank you very much for the hospitality and for your leadership. Let's give her a round of applause. I was supposed to be here once before. I was snowed out a couple of weeks ago. The snow did not abate, actually. It was snowing in Westchester this morning, and there was a question of whether or not they could fly the plane because of the snow. I said, well, if the plane doesn't fly, we'll drive, but we're going to go. And then they decided the plane could actually fly in the snow, so it's funny how those things happen. To Mayor Stephanie Miner, it's a pleasure to be with her once again. I'll tell you, you mentioned you worked with another Governor Cuomo. I was before a college audience, and I was trying to have a little fun. I said, you know, there was another Governor Cuomo, actually. And I'm looking at the college audience, all blank faces. I said, it's not a joke. Do you know there was another Governor Cuomo? All blank faces. Time marches on. That was 1994. There was another, by the way, there was another Governor Cuomo, I want you to know. You knew there was another Governor Cuomo, right? Matilda? What was the name? Oh, see what I mean? Mario Cuomo. There was another Governor Cuomo. 1994, he left. And Stephanie Miner and I actually worked together way back then. She was 11 years old at the time. She was a prodigious grammar school student at the time, and she was organizing grammar school students for Cuomo, I remember. But it was many, many years ago, and he showed Stephanie and he showed me what a difference government can make. And the mayor's right. This is not a pleasant time to be in government. It's a very difficult time to be in government. But the choices we make and the leadership we provide in government today is probably more important than it has been in decades. So it's not easy, but it's important. And that's why we do what we do, and that's why you're here. And let's give her a round of applause, Mayor Stephanie Miner. Van Robinson and all the other elected officials and your county executive, who I am a very big fan of, Joni Mahoney. Let's give her a round of applause. She is very good, and she is always on her game. You notice in the remarks, she was giving introductory remarks and greetings and introducing me, and then there was that not-so-subtle reminder about property taxes and mandate relief that she worked in. But she works it in so nicely, and she works it in with a smile. You almost don't feel the pressure when she does it that way, doesn't it? But I'll tell you what I admire most about the county executive. Too much of the politics in New York, too much of the politics in the nation right now is partisan politics, is Democratic politics and Republican politics. I've always enjoyed watching it in a legislative body. You watch the Congress or you watch the legislature in Albany, and all the Democrats always vote with the Democrats, and all the Republicans always vote with all the Republicans. Doesn't matter what the issue is. Could be some obscure issue. What color should we paint the doors? You know, all the Democrats vote one way, all the Republicans vote the other way. It can't be statistically that every Democrat always agrees with all the Democrats and all the Republicans always agree with all the Republicans. What it really means is that they are voting their party loyalty and their party identification rather than voting what's best for the people in their district, right? What they're supposed to be doing is coming up with an independent judgment. How does this affect my people, my constituents back home? And let me make the decision that is best for my people. And then you would have some Democrats this way and some Republicans that way. But what they're really doing is they're picking a position as a party, and that party is then dictating their vote, and that is wrong. What your county executive has shown time and time again, and she showed it to me personally, is she has her party identification. I have my party identification. But she represents the people first, and if that means she's going to step across the aisle to do what's in the best interest of her people, she will do it. And that is an act of political courage that we should applaud. County Executive, thank you very much. I'm going to leave the tall blonde remark alone, by the way, because the mayor can say it's one thing. I start talking about tall blondes, it's a totally different thing. Trust me on that. I am here. Some things I know in life, and that's one of them. I'm here to talk about the state budget. It was previously scheduled a few weeks ago, but it is actually, from a time point of view, more acute today, because the state legislature will be voting on this budget one way or the other, literally in about a week's time. The state deadline is April 1 for passage of a state budget. And this is the budget that I presented back in February. It's the budget that we are now negotiating with both the Assembly and the Senate to try to get passed by next week. Becoming a new governor is actually a fascinating experience. The three most important things that you're going to do in your entire first term, the 4-year term, you do basically in the first couple of months. And that's the inauguration address, where you lay out your vision for what you want to do in your administration, the state of the state, and then the budget. And the budget is the most important of the three, because the budget really puts the meat on the bones. It puts the numbers to the ideas, and it lays out the priorities. And this budget, I believe, is probably the most important budget that this state has done in decades. And as you'll see from the presentation today, it's a different type of budget. I have been governor for all of about 3 months, I want you to know. It has been a very long 3 months, I want you to know. I did not have all this gray hair when I started 3 months ago. I didn't have all these wrinkles on my face 3 months ago. That's all a function of becoming the new governor. I was elected to perform 3 goals. Number 1, to clean up Albany, to make the government work, to give you a government that you can be proud of once again, to balance the budget, get our fiscal house in order, and all of this for point number 3, which is to get the economy running and to create jobs. That's what government is supposed to be doing in the first place, right? This budget is an important budget because I believe the state is at a crossroads. And I believe we're going to pick a path and we're going to go down it, and the decisions we make will determine the future and trajectory of this state for years and years to come. So this is not a typical budget plan. It's not just about the numbers. It's more about the values and the choices that we're going to make as a society. The first point on it, and what the county executive referred to, is we spend too much money in the state of New York. That is my educated, profound statement of the day. We spend too much money. When you look at how much money the state has been spending over the past 10 years, the state spends about 5.7% every year. The tax receipts, which is how much the state is collecting, has been increasing at about 3.8%. Personal income, how much the people in your state are making, has been going up about 3.7%. And rate of inflation, which is supposed to be the basic index of what costs are going up, is about 2.4%. So we've been spending over 10 years, this is not a one-year anomaly, over 10 years, on average, double the rate of inflation, and we're spending more money than the state government is collecting. Now, there is a very sophisticated economic rule that I want the young people here to understand, and it goes like this. You can't spend more money than you make in life. That is true. There are only 2 groups that have yet to grasp this concept. One is the leadership of the New York State Legislature, and the other is my 3 daughters. I'm working with both of them as we speak. Because we spend too much, we tax too much, right? Because if you're spending more, where are you going to get it? We're not the federal government. We don't have a printing press. We're not a private sector company. We can't earn it. When government spends more money, it means they have to tax more. And that's why we have the tax situation that we have in the state of New York. $4,800 is New York's per capita state and local tax burden, 66% higher than the U.S. average, one of the worst among the states in the nation. That's not to mention the property tax bill, which is the hidden tax in New York. You know, everyone talks about the income tax, the state income tax. In my opinion, the property tax does more damage than the state income tax. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, I just can't afford to stay in the house because I can't afford the property tax. The old days, the question was, can you afford the mortgage when you were thinking about buying a house? Now the question is, can you afford the property tax when you're buying the house? $3,700 is the median New York property tax bill, 96% higher than the U.S. average. And what has been happening to the state over the past decade or so? We're in a negative cycle. The businesses leave, which means people leave, which means there's less revenue for the state, which means we raise more taxes, which means more businesses leave and more people leave. And this is a downward spiral that has been going on in this state 10, 15, 20 years statewide. Upstate, it's been going on for longer, as you know. 2 million people have left New York. Now, you could argue, well, we spend a lot of money in New York State, but we get great services. You could argue that. You'd be wrong, but you could argue that. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. We spend more money than any state in the nation on education, and we're number 34 in terms of results. We spend more than any state in health care. We're number 21 in terms of results. We spend $1.6 billion annually in economic development program, and we are dead last in terms of results. Why does this happen? Well, when you go to Albany and you pull back the curtain, what you find out is the special interests all too often are controlling the forces in the state capital. When it comes to the Albany budgeting, it's Albany budgeting meets the Enron Corporation. Now, as Attorney General, before Governor, I was Attorney General. I spent 4 years uncovering scams, healthcare scams, Wall Street scam, where they came up with their own price structure for houses, which drove the mortgage scandal that we went through. I did a scam where banks were manipulating student loans. Well, I'm telling you, as governor, this is just another scam, the way this works, where special interests have been controlling the state budget process for years and years. When you look at the state budget, it's driven by rates and formulas that are in law that have given certain groups and industries unsustainable annual increases. That is a lot of words, but that says it all, in my opinion. These rates are influenced by special interests and their lobbyists that dominate Albany. I was talking about the fact that Stephanie and I worked for Governor Cuomo many, many years ago. My father became governor. I was about 23, 24, and I went up to work for him in the state capitol. And I met all sorts of people in the state capitol, met all sorts of lobbyists and special corporation representatives. I go back as governor now, same lobbyists, same representatives of those corporations are in that same capitol. That's who's been running the government. There was a book written by a person named Jack Newfield, God rest his soul, great reporter, Daily News, Downstate Paper, New York Post. But he wrote a book called The Permanent Government. And what that book said was we tend to talk about politics and people who control politics as political parties, Democrats and Republicans. It's not Democrats and Republicans at all. It's really corporations that are controlling government through the political process, through the donations, through the political campaigns. That was true then, it's true now. And that's what this budget battle is really all about. This budget battle, to me, is really about having a budget that works for the people of this state, or a budget that continues to be controlled by the special interests and the lobbyists and the corporations of this state. And that's the fight that's really going on right now. And when you look at what this battle has been doing, it's been driving up the budget of New York at exorbitant and unsustainable rates, okay? Budgets have a rate of growth to them. Budgets go up 2%, they go up the rate of inflation, they go up 4% year to year. Question is, what do you think the New York State budget goes up? What is the rate of growth in the New York State budget? Two largest programs in the state are Medicaid and education. What do you think the state budget forecasts the growth to be? If you guess the rate of inflation, that would be a good guess because that's the normal barometer. It's sort of the nationally accepted standard. But we don't use the rate of inflation. You could say 4%, which would be a healthy rate of inflation. Or you could say, well, it's New York State and they spend a lot, so maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7. No, it's 13% increase in Medicaid and a 13% increase in education. That's what this budget has been doing. And it's not just this year. 16% the year before for Medicaid, 14% the year before that. Going forward, it's forecasted to be another 13% and another 9% for Medicaid. Education costs the same thing. Going forward, another 13% increase in education, another 11% increase in education. Nothing in life is going up at these amounts. 13% increase. Where are you going to get the money? What's going up at 13%? Is anyone's income going up 13%? Maybe you're going to pay more taxes next year. Is your home value going up 13%? Is your bank going up 13%? Only the politicians in Albany believe they can increase the state budget 13% and then ask you to pay for it. The rates of growth are unsustainable, they're unnecessary, they're unjustifiable. It is the permanent government that is at work. And what's more appalling, these rate increases have nothing to do with the performance of the government for the people. They're not tied to any performance indicators whatsoever. You know, it'd be one thing if you were spending more money on Medicaid, but you were getting better health care. It'd be another thing if you were spending more money on education, but student achievement rates were going up and graduation rates were going up. That's not what this budget is all about. This budget is more about more money for the bureaucracy, more money for the process, and it has nothing to do whatsoever with more performance for the people. It's not about student achievement. It's not about graduation. It's all about more money for the special interests. And then the way they talk about the budget is very misleading. In Albany speak, there's a language in Albany. When you drive into Albany, I don't know if you notice, they give you a new passport and they give you a new dictionary on words that explain what happens in Albany. When they say they are going to cut the budget, you've had governors in the past say, we cut the budget. Cut in Albany means a cut from the anticipated growth rate, okay? So if the budget is supposed to go up 13% and it only goes up 10%, that is a 3% cut in Albany speak. Only in Albany. The deficit, we have a $10 billion deficit. The deficit that we now have, the $10 billion, is the money we would have needed to fund the 13% increases. The assumption is you're going to fund at that rate, and that amount is the deficit. If you said, rather than a 13% increase, the budget was only going to go up at the rate of inflation, right, which would be a normal indicator. Instead of having a $10 billion budget, we have a $1 billion budget deficit. Just if you just increased it at the rate of inflation. All of this has come to a head now. Why? Because this has been going on for years. It never should have been going on. We got away with it for years because the economy was strong. But now, with the economy slow, businesses don't have the money, people don't have the money, it has really become a crisis. And it's a crisis that we have to resolve today. What do we need to do? We need to redesign the programs, make them work for performance, which we should have done a long time ago. We have to recalibrate our spending to make sure the increases are at a rate that we can afford them. And we have to rebuild the economy, and we have to get jobs coming back to this state. Starting with the Medicaid program, we put together a redesign team that totally redesigned the Medicaid program. Went all across the state, got all sorts of ideas from all sorts of people on how to redesign Medicaid, and looked at the chronic waste that was in the program and eliminating the chronic waste. For example, in the home health care program, which is one of the largest growing programs in Medicaid. Over 50 cents on the dollar in Medicaid goes to back office overhead and groups. Before you get to any patient, before you get to care, 50 cents on the dollar, just for administrative overhead for groups that are working in the program. That's the kind of waste that you have to be taking out of these government programs. Our budget actually reduces the Medicaid funding by 2%. Last year we spent $53 billion. This year we would spend $52 billion. It is a 2% cut. We believe with the redesigns that we're bringing to bear, the industry will be able to absorb it. Even with the 2% cut, when you look at the growth of Medicaid over the past 10 or 11 years, it will still go up at an average rate of 5.7% compared to 2.3% rate of inflation. Going forward, we will recalibrate Medicaid spending to a rate that we can live with. We can't afford next year, instead of having a 13% increase in Medicaid, we would have a 4% increase in Medicaid, which is tied to the National Health Care CPI Index. So there's a legitimate basis that's determining increases in the budget and increases that we can afford. Moving forward to education, I want to change the way we think about public education. Right now, the way we fund public education is the state gives money to a school district. And that school district gets money based on a formula. And that school district gets the same amount of money if that school district is doing a phenomenal job or if that school district is doing a terrible job. Only government works where there is no incentive for performance. In the private sector, everything is about performance. Government, in many ways, de-incentivizes performance. We want to change the incentives. You want people to perform, you want students to perform, you want schools to perform, you want teachers to perform, incentivize performance. So some of the money for the state we want to send out through the formula, like we've always done, so people have reliability, but then we want to run 2 performance grant programs. One for the schools that do the best in the state. Relative student achievement progress. You have your students from last year, you test them last year, you test them this year. The schools that do the best in increasing student achievement relatively will get awards. Why? Because we want to recognize them, and we want to applaud them, and we want to take those principals and those teachers, and we want to put them on a pedestal, and we want to give them a trophy, and we want to give them a cash grant, and we want to say to teachers all across the state, emulate this performance. And we want to say to principals all across the state, emulate this performance. And we want to find out what those schools are doing that's working so we can emulate those programs all across the state. Second performance grant we want to do is for the best management efficiency in school. Why? Because these are big bureaucracies. 670 school districts all across the state. Who is doing the best job managing the bureaucracy and finding efficiencies in the bureaucracy? And it's not overly sexy stuff, but it is important and it is a lot of money. Who are the best managers of the bureaucracy? Let's award them and start to award and incentivize management efficiency in government. And we'd have a $250 million grant program for the student achievement and a $250 million grant program for the management success. Last year's funding rate for education was $52.9 billion. We will reduce that amount this year by a 7% reduction of state aid, but when it's combined with the local aid, on average, it's a 2.9% reduction. So Medicaid is reduced by 2% year to year. Education is reduced by 2.9% year to year. There are a number of ways that the schools and the Medicaid community can deal with a 2% reduction and a 2.9% reduction. And we offer some suggestions for the schools, because schools are saying, as you can understand, you can't cut my budget. I can't possibly live with what's on average a 2.9% decrease in funds. I'm saying we have to be more aggressive about finding efficiencies, because the answer can't always be more money, more money, more money. We don't have more money. And I'm not going to go to the people of this state and raise taxes so we can have additional increases when we can't afford it because they are unsustainable. Well, I can't. So what everyone says is, well, I can't take a cut in my budget. And my point is, yes, you can. You really can. You may not want to. It may not be easy. It may not be desirable, but you can do it. And by the way, families all across this state have had a cut in their budget. Businesses all across this state have had a cut in their budget. The economy has slowed down for everyone. And everyone has had to find out how to be more efficient and more effective, and families had to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how to save money, and businesses had to sit around the conference table and figure out how to save money, and it's time government sits around the table and figures out how to save money. And don't tell me you can't save 2%. I don't believe it. Education has had record increases over the past decade. Double-digit increases. I don't believe you can't find 2% in savings. I took over state government on day one. I cut my budget 5%. In my own budget, I cut it another 5%. The entire state government, we're going to cut 10% year to year. Is it easy? No. Is it necessary? Yes. Can you do it in this school system? Of course you can. It's about managing a government the way we manage our family's income, our business's income, and it's about making a government actually streamlined and be concerned about efficiency and how they spend taxpayer dollars. And the schools can do the same thing. Our cut is about $1.5 billion to the schools. They have about $1.2 billion in reserves that are funded by the state. There's an additional $600 million in federal money that is unspent. We can look at the administrator's compensation. We can look at how much we pay superintendents. They don't like when I talk about this, by the way. But what the heck? We pay some school superintendents over $300,000 a year. 279 of the school superintendents, more than 40%, receive over $200,000 a year in income. We're going to have to find efficiencies in the system. Maybe we should explore a wage freeze for management officials, which would get the state over $1 billion. If the teachers paid the same amount for their health care contributions that the state employees pay, that would be half the reduction right there. And it's time we think about consolidating school districts and consolidating back office overhead. We have 676 school districts that are very small, and where if you had consolidations, you could save money. Going forward, we're going to recalibrate the education formula. They were projecting additional 13% increases, and we're going to project a 4% increase because we believe that's what's affordable for the people of the state. State operations, as I mentioned, we're going to be reorganizing all the agencies in the most comprehensive reorganization that has been done in decades. We're going to save $450 million from management, labor management savings. We're working with the workforce to try to find savings. Worst case scenario, and a scenario that nobody wants, is 9,800 layoffs on the state workforce. One of the places we can save money is in the state correctional facilities. Why? We have fewer people in prison today. That is a good thing. Mario Cuomo I administration built many, many prisons because at that time there was a demographic wave. There was a very large number of younger males who were coming of age. Crime was high, and he built a lot of prisons. We now have a 21% decline in the number of people in prisons. We have 14,000 fewer people in prisons, which means we can close cells, we can close prisons, and we can actually save money. Another place we can save money is on the juvenile justice system, which is a system that needs reform anyway. Juvenile justice system is when a young person gets into trouble, they go to a juvenile justice facility, which is similar to a prison for juveniles. The cost is exorbitant, about $250,000 per student, per person. $250,000, right? You could have sent the person to Harvard 5 times over. $250,000, and Harvard more expensive than Syracuse. Syracuse you could spend even more. The recidivism rate is 90%. So you're spending $250,000 with an over 90% recidivism rate. There are community-based alternatives that are cheaper with better results. Let's get people out of these juvenile justice facilities into community-based residences where we actually save money. And all of this is to rebuild the economy and to get the economy going again, especially in upstate New York. The cuts are not going to do it. We're going to need to grow our way out of this. We're going to need to increase revenue, and that's by creating jobs. Jobs are created not because there's one great statewide plan. Jobs are created region by region. I spent 8 years in Washington doing economic development during the Clinton administration, and this is rule 1. You have to identify assets in that region, work with the local institutions, work with the local business community, come up with a local plan. Government can be a partner, but it's private sector driven, and let government be the facilitator. We have 10 regions throughout the state. We're starting 10 regional economic development councils. Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy is going to be the chairman of the councils. There'll also be one-stop shops for all government approvals. The county will be there, the city will be there, the state will be there, working with the local business community to come up with a plan and actually execute it. This is where we are today. These are the choices. And that's what I'm trying to present in this budget to the legislature. You see where we are, you understand how we got here, and you know what we're looking at going forward. And these are choices. I am not saying that these are easy choices. I am saying these are devastatingly impactful choices. And there are 2 roads that we can go down. One is the road to ruin, one is the road to recovery, and depending on the choices we make, it will make that determination. It will be hard because change is hard. You know, change is an interesting concept. Everybody says we need change. We want change. They say it in all contexts. The students will say in class, we need change. In personal relationships, all the time, people talk about needing change. In many mornings, husbands and wives in the kitchen will say, we need to make change. We need big change. What they really mean, however, is you need to change. You know, for themselves, they're doing okay. The other person really needs to make some changes. Why? Because for ourselves, we don't really want change. We want control. You know, we want to keep doing what we're doing. We want to stay in control. This is change. This is change. We have to change the way we've been running the state. And when you change the state this way, the change is impactful because it ripples all the way through. It's going to change the way the county executive does her job. It's going to change the way the mayor does her job. It's going to change the way the chancellor does her job. It's going to change the school districts. It's going to change the hospitals. It's going to change the nursing homes. It is hard, and it is broad, and it's easier to keep doing what we're doing. But if we keep doing what we're doing, this state is going to continue to go down and down and down, and you're going to have more people leave because you're going to have more businesses leave. I know, but I don't want to change. I know, but the alternative is to continue to see a decline of the state. Well, both choices are bad. You could see it that way short term, but one choice is actually liberating and vindicating. And that's where growth comes from. When you look at the choices and you have the courage to face the choice and make the change even when it's difficult. And this is the time to do it, my friends. You know the concept, use a crisis, use an energy in the crisis? This has caused a lot of energy. And there is a lot of energy there, and we can actually use this energy to change the direction of the state. And look what we will have accomplished if we do it. If we're actually successful, we will have stopped the unsustainable spending rate of this state. We will have closed a $10 billion deficit with no new taxes, no gimmicks, no borrowing, no baloney. We will have stepped up to the plate with a financially responsible plan for the first time. We will begin a government redesign. We'll start performance funding, where we're not just funding these government programs day after day, but we actually have government programs that are delivering for people and incentivized to do that. We'll be focusing on economic growth and job creation, and we can reposition New York nationally. And we can say to businesses all across this state, we can say, take a second look at New York. New York is not what you thought we were. We're not a high-tax, anti-business, overly regulated state. We closed the deficit. We get it. We want to be a partner with business. And I believe if we do this budget and this financial scenario in this moment, when all the other states are going the other way, you're going to see a different reputation for this state nationwide. And that, my friends, is going to be the road to recovery, and that takes you. That takes you. The county executive, the mayor, the chancellor, me, we're going to do our part. But you know when change comes to a political system? When the people demand change. When the people demand change. People say to me, how did Albany get so bad so fast? I say, it didn't get so bad so fast. You couldn't get this bad that fast, by the way. You have to work at this. This took years and years and years to get this bad. And we're not going to change it overnight. But you know when we're going to take the first step? When the people in this room demand change. The political process works. Politicians listen. Politicians have very good hearing. They really do. They hear the people. Because if they don't hear the people, they're not politicians for long. It's a theory of natural selection. Read Darwin. There's a chapter. But the people have to speak, and the people have to act. And you have to make your voice heard. And right now, the way government works in Albany, in Washington, I was there too. It's the same phenomenon on a grander scale. The special interests, the corporations, the people who are funding their campaigns, those voices are loud and powerful. And they're right there. You walk down a hallway in Albany. You walk into that assembly chamber. You walk into that Senate chamber. They're all right there. And they're telling the politicians how to vote. And they're supporting the politicians. And they're making contributions. And they're powerful. And it's easy to get sucked into that. And the antidote to that, the counterbalance to that, the counterforce is the people. You vote. You elect the politicians. You have to make your voice heard, and you have to make your voice heard now. And that's what this is going to be about. Democracy works when you make it work, and that's what this moment is all about. It's down to the last week. It is down to the last week. And I don't know what the Assembly's going to do, and I don't know what the Senate's going to do, but I can tell you what I'm going to do. I can tell you what we're going to do. We're not going to give up this fight. We are not going to give up this fight. I am not going to take a step back. I am not going to agree to a dishonest budget. I am not going to agree to another budget that raises spending in this state on people who can't afford to pay more taxes. I'm not going to pass another budget that chases businesses from this state. I am not going to do it. We know that that hasn't worked. We know how we got here. And we know we're not taking one more step down that road to ruin. We're going to pivot. We're going to change. We're going to grow. It's going to be tough up front. It's going to be tough to confront these new economic realities, but if we do what we have to do, we're going to bring this state to a place where it's never been before. You think it's been the Empire State. You think we've been our best. We haven't even touched our potential. I spent 8 years in Washington, as I mentioned. I worked in every state in this nation. Many, many times I've been to every state. I know what everyone else has. And I can tell you no one has what we have here in New York. No one has our mix. No one has our history, our geography, our diversity. Nobody has our academic universities. No one has Syracuse University. Nobody has our workforce. Nobody has our healthcare institutions. Nobody has our people. Nobody has our diversity. It is that diversity, it is that blend that made us so strong. Nobody has our assets. No other state can touch us. We just haven't had a government in Albany that's as good as the people of this state. And we haven't had the people of this state stand up and say enough is enough. It's my government. I want it back. It's my state. It's my future. We're going forward. We're going forward together. We're going to make New York the Empire State. We're going to make it shine like it's never shined before. And we're going to start today. Thank you and God bless you.